Hello everybody. I'm gonna try to speak very slowly so everybody can understand me because it's a weird mixture of English accent with Argentinian accent, which is probably confusing. Uh, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't. No way I can give this talk in Spanish. I practiced it in English too many times. I've been living in England for 17 years now, so I've actually never done UX in Spanish, so it's great to be here and hopefully have chats with people about how you speak about UX in Spanish, because I have no idea how to do it. I've been working in agencies for about 10 years in the UK, and I learned lots of things, but I think one of the most important things I learned that is, doesn't matter how good a designer you are, if you cannot relate well with your clients, if you cannot get them to buy in on your designs and on your process, the end result is never going to be as good as you like it to be, because you're going to end up compromising at the end because your clients won't be happy with your work. So one of the ways I learned that you can solve this problem is by running workshops. So I'm going to be talking about the things I learned through the years and how to run good workshops, and why I think it's a good idea to use them as you know, your secret weapon. But before that, I would like to tell you a little bit of a story. And this story takes place a long time ago in a place called Troy. And Troy was a very, very powerful city. And they were lucky that they were in a very privileged geographical area, and they had control of a sea lane that took boats into the Black Sea. Now, the Greek Empire, who at the time was trying to expand as much as they could, they weren't very happy with it because they need to pay a lot of money to go through Troy to kind of access the Black Sea. So they were looking for an excuse to invade Troy. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Troy, so they didn't have a very excuse in that sense, but there was another reason that they could use, and that was that the prince of Troy decided to kidnap Helen, which was the wife of one of the Greek emperors. So there you go, they had an excuse to go and invade Troy, so off they went. And there were thousands and thousands of soldiers, Greek soldiers, going to Troy. And so you would have expected that it's going to be, you know, a very quick war, a very easy win for them. Go and invade Troy and, you know, take control of the city and control of the canal that went into the Black Sea. But that's not what actually happened. They actually spent a long time trying to invade Troy, and they couldn't do it. And the reason for this was this very, very high wall that Troy had built around the city, and it was a very effective wall. Now, after 10 years of a siege of the Greeks trying to invade Troy, Odysseus, who was great Greek warrior, decided that it was time to think about things in a different way. And instead of trying to enter Troy, you know, with brute force, he wanted to think of a way to do it where he was going to make the people from Troy actually allowing him into the city. He wanted to give them something they wanted so that they would allow him in. So Odysseus went to see his friend, Epeius, and he asked him to build him a horse, a big horse, very big and beautiful horse. But he wanted to make sure that the wooden horse was hollow inside, so he could hide a little surprise for the viewer from Troy. So Epeius went and built a horse for Odysseus. And what they did is they put the horse outside Troy, just left it there, and pretended that they were leaving, going away, because they have lost the war, and they were leaving the horse as a present for Athena, the goddess that the Greeks kind of love the most, and to protect him for their troubles on their way back. So the Trojans thought that had won the war, they were very happy, and they thought that as a kind of like nice present from the Greeks, they would take the horse inside the city walls. And so they took the horse inside Troy, and then they had a massive party, and they got very, very drunk, and then they went to sleep. And during the night, out of the horse, Odysseus came out with his best soldiers and opened the walls of the city, and then all the Greek warriors went in the city and conquered Troy. And that was the end of the story. They took control of the city, took control of the canal, and the Georgians had to kind of leave the city, run away as fast as they could because they were going to kill them all. And that was the end of the story. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell all of this has to do with UX design? Well, I do feel like being a UX designer, it feels a little bit sometimes like being Odysseus, or standing outside the wall of Troy, looking to this really massive wall, and you kind of throwing things to the other side. Hopefully they would hit something, and that eventually you'll be able to kind of get into the city. But but that doesn't really happen. Doesn't happen by brute force anyway. So I think that workshops can be a really, really good way of getting through the wall in the same way that a Trojan horse would do. And it does not only allows you to get through the wall, but also allows you to bring lots of things on the other side of the wall that you want to bring in, so that you can get your clients on your side, you can get them to understand your processes, and you can get them to support you in your work. So, first of all, I would like to ask you a question before we get into the topic of workshops. And that question is, have you ever been a client? Have you ever been to the doctor, or maybe to a mechanic, or maybe had a plumber or electrician do work in your house? Maybe someone fixed your laptop because it broke, your phone? I'd like to think about it. Have you ever been a client yourself? And I would like to get back to the moment and try to think about what were you thinking at the time and how were you feeling when you were talking to someone who knew about something that was very important to you, they knew about it much more than you did, and you were depending on their advice and their expertise to help you. So maybe lots of thoughts went through your mind at that time. Maybe things like, I have no idea what they're talking about, and you just were too scared to ask any questions because you didn't want to look stupid. So you probably went like, oh yeah, I understand everything you're saying, and then you went home and looked things up on Google and tried to learn as much as you could about the subject, just so you could understand it. Or maybe you thought, that's not what I told them I wanted. You felt like they didn't really understand what you're asking them for. So you didn't feel like they were listening to you as well as you like. Maybe you thought, I think there's a way to solve that problem. Even if you were talking to someone who had many, many years of experience in that specific area, you still thought, they're not giving it enough thought, I think I can come up with a better solution. Or maybe you thought, I barely know them. Because maybe, say someone is fixing your laptop, you never met this guy before, you're just leaving your most precious thing to them, and you don't know them, so why would you trust them that they won't do something horrible to your laptop while you leave them in their hands? So, this is all the kind of thoughts and feelings that you have when you're kind of depending on someone else's expertise and you don't really know the subject as well as they do. So things like the fear of the unknown, fear of losing control of something that might be very important to you. It could be your health, it could be your laptop, it could be your website. Miscommunication as well, that's kind of a problem. You feel that you don't understand each other because you might not be speaking the same language. And the lack of trust problem. So all of these problems, I feel like, are the ones that kind of create this wall between you and your clients, or you and the colleagues you need to collaborate with. So I think our workshops are a great way of addressing these issues and help you to get through the wall. And I think that every second that you spend with your clients and colleagues is an opportunity, because the time that you spend together with them, just by getting to know them, it helps you to build trust. You can educate them. You can help you to create shared ownership as well of everything you are creating for them and designing. It's a time that you can spend talking to them and listening to them, and it's time that you can gain, trust. So, what are the kind of things that you can smuggle in your Trojan horse, apart from addressing these problems that create the wall? Well, I'm going to give you some examples of the kind of workshops I run and the kind of things I think I can get out of them. So, for example, think about a personas workshop. So a personas workshop is a workshop in which I create personas in a sort of collaboration with my clients. And obviously what you get at the end of the workshop is a nice set of personas. But not only that, you can also use that as an opportunity to teach your clients about user-centered design. You can use an opportunity to get them to apply your research findings to a specific task, which means that you actually get them to read your research findings, which is quite a big achievement, I believe. You can also kind of create a sort of empathy between your clients and their customers, and also you can become user champions. So it will help you to build the personas themselves. They'll probably defend them across the organization and kind of sell them to other people that will also be involved in the project in the future. Then there is user journeys workshops, where you hopefully analyze some opportunities for your product by creating a user journey with your clients, but also teaching even further about user-centered design, and also how to derive requirements from actual user research by doing this together. and maybe teaching them a little bit about service design and kind of help them to look at the bigger picture and not just focusing on one specific touch point that might be the website, but get them to think about how all the different touch points might affect the experience. And requirements workshops, which are always very good fun, and you spend a lot of time going through big requirement lists and trying to prioritize them. But you can also use it as an opportunity to kind of teach them a bit about agile and lean, and also to build consensus and make sure that by the end of the workshop and later on during the project, everybody knows what the scope of the project is and everybody has agreed on it and has an ownership of it. So these are all the great things you can do in workshops. And co-design workshops are the most fun of all, when you just kind of get the pens out and spend a lot of time sketching with your clients and your colleagues. And again, you kind of get another opportunity to teach them about user-centered design, but also things like responsive design and obviously shared ownership of the designs, which means that there is not like a moment at the end of the project where you suddenly show them your designs and they really have not sense of ownership, and they start asking you for lots of changes because they don't understand how did you arrive to the designs in the first place. And they might become, design champions in the organization and really talk great things about your work to other people in the company, which will help you in the long term to be able to create better designs and hopefully more projects in the future. So by taking the clients and colleagues with you through this journey, the whole sort of user-centered design process, it means that when you arrive to your destination, everybody knows what you've gone through and why you got, to that end point in the first place, and why did you get to that end point feeling the way you do, and the decisions that were made in the way. So hopefully that means that there won't be like a last minute change when suddenly your client or your colleagues ask you to change everything you've done without a very well thought out rationale based on research and the all kind of creative process that you've gone through. So I hope I convinced you how great workshops are after all this, that you actually think that it's a good idea to run workshops with your clients. So now I would like to spend a little bit of time telling you a little bit about how making sure that the workshops are effective and that you actually have fun running them, and the people who come to your workshops have fun too, and that actually you get some really good results out of them. So let's talk about how to build and deploy your very own design Trojan horse. So the first thing you need to do when you start a workshop, in the same way that when you design a website, you need to design your strategy. What is that you want to get out of the workshop? So for things that we've seen before, there are things about creating shared ownership and building trust that always should be part of what you want to achieve. And there might be some specific deliverable that you want to have at the end of the workshop, like a set of personas, for example. But there might be other things that might be useful for you. Maybe getting the buy-in of specific stakeholder in the project, or solving some kind of issues between the project team that needs to be addressed. So there might be other things that you want to achieve with your workshop. So make the most of it, think it very well beforehand, so you make sure that you plan your workshop around this strategy. Then it's time to pick your participants. So it could seem very obvious to think, oh well, the participants in my workshop will be the people who know the stuff I want, I need. But sometimes there are people who doesn't really know much about design or doesn't really even know much about the project. But other people who actually will make the decisions at the end of the project, whether that design is right or not, whether it's being signed off or not, whether there is money for the next phase of your project. So even if you think they don't know much about anything of use in your workshop, you still want to invite them, to take part, because you want them to feel part of your team. You want them to be on your side. And then obviously people who have specific knowledge of the users or whatever it is that you need for that workshop are the people who you're going to invite. Then it's time to decide on the activities you're going to be running in your workshop. Now, there are many ways you're going to select your activities. So it might be around the deliverables you want to get at the end of the workshop. But it might also have to be related to the type of participants you have, how important the people in the workshop is, what kind of mixture of people there is in the workshop, whether it's some kind of really big boss that's coming and is going to be joining in, so it means that you need to plan things around that as well. You want to make sure that the workshop is like any experience. You want it to be a great experience. So in the same way that you design maybe a website, an application, or any kind of digital experience, you want your workshop to be as well a great experience from beginning to end. You want it to flow. You want it to feel like the right thing, and the people at the end of after the workshop, they leave feeling quite happy that they took part. So when it comes to selecting activities, I mean, it's amazing what you can do just with this. You know, with post-it notes, sticky notes, Sharpies, paper, that's all you need for most of the activities you ever do in your workshop. So yeah, there is no excuse in saying that you can't run a workshop because you have enough stationery or whatever that you think you might need. So having those tools always available, that means that you can always be ready to run any kind of workshop you need. And there is also really great resources, lots of books give you lots of ideas about what kind of activities you can run. Obviously, there's also kind of going to conferences as well. You learn about great activities. If you go to workshops that people run, at the moment of the conference, you're probably learning about, the kind of activities you might in workshops yourself with your clients. But there's a great book. There's one of the ones I refer to most called Game Storming. And the great thing about Game Storming, they not only give you lots of ideas about the kind of activities you might run, but also teach you how to create your own activities, your own games. So that's quite good because it gets you to understand, how games are created and what makes a good game. Another thing to have in mind when it comes to running a workshop is how do you balance group activities with individual activities. Now, group activities are great for people to kind of gain confidence at the beginning of a workshop because there's not so much pressure on themselves to come up with anything, and they can build and share ideas. And there's, the limelight is not in one specific person. So in that sense, they're really, really good. But it's good always to mix group activities with individual activities. Part of the reason for this is to do with social conformity. There have been lots of studies around social conformity, which they prove that in one of three scenarios, what will happen is the people in the group will follow whatever the most powerful person in the group thinks. Which means that if you're always running group activities, you're probably going to be missing the opinions and voices of lots of people in the room. So you want to make sure that you give the opportunity to those people to also be able to express themselves and express their voice, their opinions in your workshop. So it's nice to kind of balance the two types of activities. Also think about the different personality types, like introverts, against extroverts. Some people need time to, think by themselves to come up with good ideas. Other people come up with good ideas by talking to others. So it's good to have that in mind as well when you're deciding, the kind of like activities you're going to be running, whether it's group activities, individual activities. Then there is another thing that you need to balance in the workshop, which creates the structure of the workshop, and that is opening activities and closing activities. Now, opening activities are activities where you create lots of choices, lots of ideas, and the closing activities when you start kind of making choices. So, let's say, for example, you are running a design workshop, co-design workshop, and the first thing you want to do is like people to come up with ideas that they might have in a specific page. And so, you want to do an open activity and get people to come up with as many ideas as they can. And after a while, when they come up with lots of ideas, what you want them to do is start kind of narrowing down and deciding which are the best ideas. So you can use things like sticky dots, for example, to get people to put sticky dots in, prefer ideas and things like that to make it kind of quite democratic. And that kind of is a closing activity. You're starting kind of narrowing down. But then after you have all the ideas and the ideas you're working around, the ideas you're going to be designing for, then you might decide, okay, now it's time to do lots of sketches, and you want people to do as many sketches as possible, and maybe do something like 6 up, when you get people to do 6 different ideas for one specific page in a short amount of time, really quickly. So everybody's generating lots of ideas again, but this time in sketches. And again, you want to start kind of narrowing down because you don't want to kind of end up, at the end of the workshop with millions of ideas and not really having a clue of which ones are the ones that are more, preferred by the people in the team. So then again, you want to do some kind of prioritization or selection and narrowing down. And you can go through the cycle of opening activities and closing activities several times through your workshop, depending how long the workshop is and what you're trying to achieve. And by the end, obviously, by the end of the day, hopefully you'll be closing your workshop with that closing activity. So that's kind of as simple as it is, when it comes to structuring workshops. Now, you know what your strategy is, and you created a plan around that strategy, and you're kind of ready to kind of start your workshop. You want to make sure that the room you selected creates the right atmosphere. So it's silly, but I don't know how it's around here, but it's always a meeting room issue where you can never find enough meeting rooms, or big enough meeting rooms, or meeting rooms with light, or any kind of room where you can run a workshop that is not a horrible pristine room with nothing on the walls and no natural light. So if you can book that, take as much as advance as possible so you can get a good place, that's great. But it's not only about finding the right room, it's like what you do with the room as well can be really important and make a very different, for a very different atmosphere in the workshop you're running. So I personally like to go for this look when it comes to my workshops. I call it the kindergarten look. And if it's possible, just put things on the walls, put lots of toys around, just lots of color pens, whatever you can bring in, doesn't matter how silly it is, bring a little bit of color to the room. And that will make people a little bit more relaxed, because you're probably going to be doing a lot of creative stuff. You need people to feel relaxed. And always sometimes, if say I'm working with a client and they're in a big organization where they tend to have to dress up to go to work, if I'm running the workshop in my own space, I tell them to dress down, so to kind of not come in suits or anything like that, so they can be a bit more relaxed. And also, it's quite amazing the difference it can make the layout of the room. So the way that the tables and chairs are laid out in the room can actually make a really big difference in the dynamics of the group. Like the one layout I hate most, I don't know if you've seen it, I don't know how much is here, but they call it horseshoe, where you got these kind of tables laid out in this kind of fashion where everybody's looking at each other, but with a massive gap in the middle. And I think that's kind of the worst layout you can have for a workshop, because people are not able to connect properly and really have close conversations. So just play around with the way you lay out tables, depending obviously what kind of activities you're going to be doing. If you have separate groups, obviously you'll have people around one table, whatever that is. But have that into in your mind when you get to the room you're going to be using, and think, do I need to change anything around the tables and the chairs? So you've got your room and everybody's there, and you're gonna start your workshop. And now it's time for you to lead them, through whatever activities you're gonna be running through the day. And at this time, it's very important that you earn the respect. And obviously, this is not just for the workshop, but it will have an impact in the way that you could relate to your clients and colleagues through the rest of the project. But during the workshop is the time that you can actually achieve this, which is earn your participant respect. And this is because respect is, it's not something that is given, it's something that you have to earn from people. And the way you earn is, first of all, by respecting yourself and respecting others. And I think that a useful tool that you can use to learn how to earn people's respect when you run your workshops is the assertiveness model. So assertiveness is a communicational and behavioral style based on mutual respect. And being assertive means that you express yourself effectively and stand up for your point of view, while also respecting the rights and the beliefs of others. So according to this model, there are 4 modes or styles of communication and behavior. Oh, you can see 3 here, but I'm not crazy, you'll see in a minute. So the first one is the passive communication style. And people who are passive tend to avoid expressing their opinions and feelings. They don't protect their rights or meet their needs. So they say yes when they don't mean to say yes. And they allow things build up inside, because they're putting up with lots of things they don't really want to put out, but they don't agree with, until at some point they explode. And they feel really ashamed of the fact that it exploded, and so they go back to the passive style again. Then we have aggressive communicators, and aggressive communicators, sorry. Sorry, trying to read my notes, but so aggressive communicators express their feelings and opinions, and they fight for their needs in a way that violates the rights of others. So they can be verbally and physically abusive, and they might resort to insulting, humiliating, and manipulating others as a way of getting what they need. So not very pleasant for the other people in the room. And then we finally have passive-aggressive communicators, and these people behave a little bit like prisoners of war. So on the surface, they are being passive, and they, they're kind of happy to go along to whatever they say. They look a bit, similar to the passive style, but they're trying, quietly to sabotage everything that's going on around them. So in the same way, a prisoner of war, they might sort of make fun of the enemy or quietly disrupt the system while smiling and appearing cooperative. That's the way passive-aggressive people behave. And finally, last but not least, is the assertive style of communication. This is the one that we're aiming for and the one that will earn you people's respect. So assertive communicators are able to clearly state their opinions and feelings and advocate for the rights and needs without violating the rights of others. So they value themselves and their time and take responsibility for any choices they might make. So just to give you a little bit of more information about assertive style. So they state their needs and feelings clearly, appropriately and respectfully. They use I statements, which means that they own what they're saying. They're not kind of saying, you know, you say this or people feel that. You have to say, I feel this and I believe this. They speak in a calm and clear tone of voice. They don't allow others to abuse and manipulate them. And they stand up for their rights. And very importantly, they listen well without interrupting. I'm going to give you just a few examples just to kind of you learn a little bit more of these. Although, you know, learning assertiveness, you know, I would kind of recommend you go and read more about it. But just to give you more of an idea of how it might look like sort of in a work environment. So say you're stating your feelings in a work environment and, you know, someone is being annoying you, constantly asking you for things throughout the day and you just can't get anything done. So you can answer to them in an assertive way, which is, I find it difficult to focus on my work if you keep sending me these questions. Can you please put them all together and we can spend some time tomorrow resolving your doubts? Now, what you're saying here is that you're stating your feelings in a very clear manner without, you know, resorting to, you know, any kind of aggression towards the person who's asking you these questions. And at the same time, you're addressing their needs by providing them an alternative. Then, for example, a discrepancy. So they say you're in a workshop and you kind of all agreed and, you know, you follow, you know, what's the, you know, the favorite idea and you're going to kind of move on to your next activity, but someone's kind of suddenly contesting that idea and wanted to come up with other ones. So you can say to them, I believe you agreed that the idea with most votes will be the one taken forward. Why are you asking to discuss the ideas again? So you kind of stating, this is the agreement we made earlier, we all made it, and this is kind of the discrepancy. So again, you are not kind of being aggressive towards them, you're kind of respecting what they're saying, but you're kind of just pointing out that, you know, they're kind of being a little bit unreasonable. So priorities, for another last example. I understand that you need this urgently, but I have another deadline today. Can we talk about this first thing tomorrow? So in this case, again, you're stating the need of the other person, you know, that they're coming to you with something that they need from you. But you're saying, well, I actually have this need myself, and then you provide them an alternative. So you're not ignoring them, you know, ignoring what they're telling you, you're kind of respecting the fact that, you know, they have a need, but you also have your own, and you're trying to come up with a way of, you know, finding a solution that addresses both. So, you know, assertiveness is something that takes time to learn, a lot of practice, and you know, it's great to learn, you know, a little bit more if you can. But, you know, in a nutshell, it's about, you know, the fact that you must respect yourself and others if you want to be respected. So, let's say you know, gain the respect of the participants in your workshop now. And as I say, respect is all about the rights, which is about kind of setting the right boundaries. And another way to help you set boundaries in the workshop, so not only are you're being respected, but everybody else is respecting each other as well in the workshop, is setting rules from the start. So at the beginning of each workshop, I always do this and come up with a set of rules, which can be things like mobile phone off. Everybody's got the mobile phone off? Just in case. Laptops closed, only one conversation we got once, everybody must participate. So these are the ones that I normally have, and I might other things if needed. And that, you know, just kind of coming up with these rules from the beginning of the workshop makes a big difference. But one of the really important things for make the rules work is that at the beginning of the workshop you ask people whether if they agree with them. You ask them if they're happy with the rules, if there's anything they want to change about the rules, if they want to add any new rules to the list or take any off the list. Because it's when the participants actually have a sense of ownership of the rules, is that they're going to be adhering to them, otherwise they will just ignore them. So once they kind of agree that they're happy with the rules, and you might have to, you know, change it. I mean, a lot of the times happened to me that, you know, I asked for people to, you know, switch off their mobile phone, and someone said, well, actually have this very important call at, you know, 3 o'clock. So, you know, it's very simple. Well, you need to have that call at 3 o'clock, you leave the room, you have your call, and then when you're done, you come back, and it's simple. So try not to come up with too many rules, because then people won't be able to remember them. If you can, post them up on a wall so everybody can refer to them through the day. But it's quite amazing how effective they can be, and if somebody kind of break the rules, it might even have to be you who have to kind of put them in the place. It will be someone else, one of the participants who might say to them, hey, you're not allowed to have your mobile phone on. So a great way of getting the group to self-regulate and respect each other throughout your workshop. Okay, so you have your rules, so everybody knows where they're standing, and you're ready to start with activities. Now, if you're working with a group of people that have never worked together before, or maybe they work together in the same organization, or in the same company, but that doesn't mean that they used to do kind of creative work together. So you want to kind of give them an opportunity to kind of ease themselves into this slowly. So you can do like some really silly activities to warm them up, to kind of get them comfortable with each other. There are lots of warm-up exercises. I'm not going to kind of start giving you examples here because it really depends the kind of people you're working with. But there are loads and loads of resources on the web that you can look at. Also like books like the Big Book of Icebreakers. There are even little packs of cards that you can get that have like some really silly conversation starters and activities. But yeah, I really recommend that if it's the first time you run a workshop with a group of people, that you always kind of come up with some activity to warm them up first before you get stuck into the actual real artwork. Then once your participants start working and they're coming up with ideas, the next thing you need to do is listen. Now this is very essential. It is not only essential for an assertive communicator, as you see was one of the things in the list for assertive behavior. So listening is not only about being an assertive communicator, but it's also about being a great designer. So Michael Brearwood, because I don't know if you've heard about him, he's been kind of well-known designer, he's quite famous. He's often told that clients really like him because he's listened to everything they say. He sees himself as a bit of like a doctor, so he sees his clients as patients. And he believes that he listens to his patients hard enough, with enough focus, that they're going to actually give him the solutions. So he sees himself as a facilitator. He doesn't see himself as someone who come up with all the solutions himself, but facilitates his patients into coming up with the solutions that they need. So for him being a good designer, you need to be able to be a good listener as well. But what is it to be a good listener? Well, being a good listener is not about hearing. Hearing is different from listening. So when you're listening, you're actually focusing on the other person, and not only focusing on the sort of verbal communication. You're also focusing on other kind of language, so for example, body language. So you're actually trying to capture the full message the other person is giving you. So you're just kind of listening to the words, trying to make sense of them, but also kind of looking at them and trying to kind of understand what the body language is also telling you. And your ability to listen effectively depends on the degree to which you perceive and understand these messages. So, however good you think your listening skills are, the only person who can judge whether if you're a good listener or not is the person you're actually listening to. And a very good way to find out whether if you actually are a good listener is to start using what is called reflecting. So when you're reflecting, what you do is you repeat back to what the other person tells you, and you might repeat it back in your own words, or you might repeat it back in a very similar way that the person told you whatever it is that they told you. And in this way, you'll be able to check what the understanding of what they said is correct or not. And reflecting is great for many reasons. One is like it forces you to focus on the person because you cannot reflect back to the person told you if you're not really listening to them properly. But also it's very good to kind of get people speaking. When you're reflecting back, people feel much motivated. They kind of think, oh yeah, I'm actually being listened to, and they actually keep speaking, much longer than they would otherwise. So reflecting is really great because it helps you to focus, but also helps you to get people talking more and telling you more interesting things. Now, sometimes you're being great, you're being assertive, and you're being a great listener, but you got this feeling that it's like you're a boat, going towards an iceberg, like slowly, getting closer and closer, and things are gonna go really badly because people are not agreeing about things in your workshop. You're kind of going around the houses for ages, going around in circles, and people are just not in your workshop are not agreeing about something very important. And now in this situation, something that you can use, which is very helpful, is what is called position, interest, and needs model. Now, the position, interest, and needs model Because it's based on the fact that they believe that the idea that there are very few basic needs that everybody has, and people pursue these needs by having certain interests, and then they create positions which they believe will satisfy these interests and needs. Now, I think the best way to explain this is with an example, but position is what people say they want, interest is what they really want, and a need is what they actually must have. So, let's say that client came to you and you can give them a design, and the thing they came up with is that they want you to make the logo bigger, much bigger. And you're trying to say to them, look, the logo is taking all this space that can be used for many more useful things that we need to include in this page. You really shouldn't do that. Doesn't look right. And you might have a discussion with them and trying to kind of make them say, why, all these reasons why they shouldn't make the logo bigger. But instead of doing this, what you could do is you can start asking them questions and trying to understand why do they want to make the logo bigger. So if we go back to the position, interest, and need model, you can say, okay, the position that they have is that they want you to make the logo bigger. But if you start asking them, it might be, interesting reasons why they want you to make the logo bigger. So it could be that they think that's the way that they want to increase brand awareness. So it could be that their boss designed the logo and they think that the boss is going to be happy with them if the logo is really big because show how great, how great the boss is. But let's say in this case the interest is to increase more brand awareness. So now that you know that is the reason why they want to make the logo bigger, you can try to find other positions that will address this. So, you can say to them, well, you want to increase brand awareness, we can talk about marketing communications, we can talk about copywriting, we can talk about the look and feel of the website, you can talk about social media strategy. You can start telling, giving out other ways that they can address this interest, which is kind of increasing the brand awareness, until you're making the logo bigger, it's not such a big thing anymore. So this is really good way of, getting people to agree on things, and not kind of being stuck, in a specific, each one in their specific position. And if you kind of dig a little bit deeper and try to understand why, it's really important for this person to increase brand awareness, you might find out things like, for example, that, say it's a small business owner, so it might be that, their identity is very much attached to their brand. So the sense of identity is being threatened if the brand awareness is not good enough. So by understanding what the actual underlying need is, it will really help you to empathize with your client or whoever it is that you're having the discussion about, because we all have needs, and the needs are all the same, they are universal, which means that you can see, from their point of view, why is that, they're feeling really threatened about something you think is really silly. You can empathize with them, and hopefully you'll be kind of more willing to help them out in this, because you've been in a similar situation in the past as well. Now, sometimes you're everything right. You're kind of being assertive, and you being a good listener, and you kind of trying to get people to agree on things, using the right model, like looking at the interests and all this sort of thing. But there's someone in the workshop that is being incredibly annoying. They might be pushing your buttons, or the buttons of other people in the workshop, and not letting them get on with their work. Now, as a facilitator, it's your responsibility to make sure that you take control of these difficult personalities. You can't just let them run riot and ignore them and disrupt the whole workshop for everybody else. Now, there is kind of another model that I found really useful that works quite well with assertiveness, or if you don't get on very well with that one, it's something you can use instead, and it's more focused around group dynamics as well, so it's really helpful for that. And that is transactional analysis theory. Some of you might have heard of this already. It's been Argentina and all that, the obsession with psychology. So transactional analysis, they talk about 3 different ego states, and the ego states are parent, adult, and child. And the first ego state, parent, can be expressed in 2 different ways, as a nurturing parent and controlling parent. So they believe we all kind of fall into different ego states at different times. So if you're following the parent ego state, the nurturing ego state, the nurturing ego state will kind of incorporate external sources. So people that in your life, the way that your parents or have kind of parental responsibilities of you, you absorb their behaviors, and then they kind of become part of you. And when you're expressing your parent ego states, those are the things that will come out. So if you have really not enough nurturing or controlling parents, that's probably what will kind of come up. You probably have different role models in your life that you had when you grew up. So they probably have a little bit of both in your sort of behavioral set. Then there is the adult ego state. And the adult ego state is where you actually focus in the present, you focus in facts, and it's nothing to do with age or anything like that. You can kind of fall into your adult ego state at any age. And it's a kind of behavior concerned with collecting information and organizing and analyzing. And the behavior that you have when you're in adult ego state is appropriate to the situation that's being experienced at the time. So it's focused in the here and now, and you're not kind of sort of reflecting back anything that happened to you in the past or anything like that. And then finally we have the child ego state. And the child ego state contains any kind of impulses that any infant might have, and it can be expressed in two different ways. One is a free child, which is kind of spontaneous, energetic, curious, loving, and inhibited. And then this adapted child that develop when you learn to change your feelings and behavior in response to the world around you. So it's kind of adapted to the kind of situations you live through. Now, just to give you a little idea how you can use this in a workshop situation, let's look at an example. So let's say that someone in your workshop is falling into the child ego state, and they're just being a pain. They just don't want to do what you ask them to do. They're just kind of being a bit spoiled, and it's just kind of difficult for you to handle. So what would normally happen if someone is kind of falling into the child ego state, what you'll do is you're kind of gonna fall in the adult state. You're kind of gonna go into the opposite way. So you're gonna end up stuck in this dynamic or game, as it's called in transactional analysis, where because a person is behaving like a child, you're gonna start telling this person off like you would a child, and you fall probably in a controlling parent ego state. Now, that's not really appropriate because they're not your child. You know, you're in a kind of work situation, you're in a workshop, you should really not be telling your participants off at the workshop. So by using this model, you can actually become conscious of what is actually happening and avoid this. So instead of falling for a parent ego state and then having this kind of like, I'm telling you off and the other person is behaving badly, what you have to do is try to get back to your adult ego state. And if you go back to the adult ego state, the other person will have any choice eventually back to fall in the adult ego state too. And then you'll be able to have a much more rational conversation about what's happening and hopefully, get back the dynamics of your workshop back into track. So transactional analysis can be really helpful to kind of understanding our behaviors and the behaviors of people around us. So you can pick which one you want, assertive behavior or transactional analysis. Now, another way to address difficult participants in the workshop as well, I find that using individual activities really good. When we talk about group against individual activities, if you've got someone that's being really difficult, you can always fall back to say, okay, we're going to be doing this activity which, say, for example, everybody has to kind of work on their own, and you just write things on post-it notes, and then we're going around the table, and one person at a time have to say what they've written down, for example. And that means that everybody has the same voice, and nobody can take over, and there's very clear rules. And it means that if it's someone who's being quite disruptive, they have as much room to be as disruptive as they would like to. And then you can make up your own rules. And one rule I kind of came up with, for example, for a series of workshops I was running with a group of people where there were some kind of very opinionated characters. Some people who were very, very vocal and they kind of were speaking for ages and not let anybody else speak. So what I did is come up with a rule, which was the 60 seconds rule. And I had a timer on the table, and the rule was that nobody was allowed to speak for longer than 60 seconds without letting other people, answer back to what they were saying. And it was really interesting because I actually never had to use the timer. I just had the timer on the table, and if someone was going to start, a really long, monologue about what they thought about everything in life and the universe, I just had to look at the timer. And everybody at the table knew what that meant, and they all looked at the time and then looked at the person felt really embarrassed and they stopped talking, which was great. You can be creative and come up with any kind of rules that might help you to address specific, characters that you have to deal with in your workshops. And then once everybody's, saying that there is, everything under control, everybody's carrying on with activities, there is no difficult personality, so they're all under control, and everybody's kind of getting really creative. The next thing you need to do is to do nothing. You need to stay out of the way. So I know that as designers it's really hard to step back and not get, do all this work yourself and be creative and coming up with ideas and do, everything yourself. But if you're in a workshop situation, the idea is that you want to capture everybody else's ideas and get them to feel, ownership of what they do, they're doing of the project. You'll have plenty of chances when you go back to your desks later on to kind of refine everything that they came up in the workshop and kind of work further into it. But while you're in the workshop, is the opportunity of your participants to be creative and to come up with ideas. And you might guide them a little bit, but you want to stay out of the way and just kind of listen to what they go say and just let them kind of come up with things themselves. And obviously, I'm not telling you just leave the room and let them get on with it, because that's not great either. What you need to do is just step back and then you just keep an eye on the room. And if say a group is kind of coming, is working on an activity, if they need you, if they need you to help you with it, they're going to make eye contact with you, and you'll know that they want you there. If they're not looking at you and they're stuck in doing their own thing, just don't go and say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And you could do this, you could do that. That's the most disruptive things you can do. So just keep an eye on the room, and if people want you or need you because they're stuck with an activity or because someone's been a bit annoying, they'll look for you, and you'll know that they need you then. So so stay out of the way. And last but not least of tips for workshop facilitation is celebrate. Now this might seem really silly, but every time you finish an important activity or achieve a milestone in your workshop, so you get to the end of the workshop, it's really important to celebrate the achievements of the people who've taken part. Because it makes them feel, first of all, it makes them feel like that whatever they've done in the workshop is valuable, and they will leave feeling a kind of greater sense of satisfaction when they leave the workshop. They'll be more motivated to come back to other workshops that you might run, and they will also tell great things about the thing, about how the workshops that you run. So if you need other people in the company to come and help you in workshops, they actually will be more willing to give up their time to come and take part. And I have this, happen to me where I started running some workshops and people, I started telling other people in the organization to a point where I actually have to say I didn't have time to do more workshops because everybody wanted to get involved, get stuck in and do things because I thought it was, they had a very, very good fun. So yeah, just kind of like celebrate it and thank them for the work they've done and make them feel that whatever they've done is really, really valuable. And also as well, like if you're representing an agency or a company, whatever that is, if people leave your workshops feeling happy, that reflects very well on you and also in the agency you're representing, which is really what you want, because you're representing your own brand when you're running a workshop. So I hope you find this really, really useful. And I just want to say, you're certified church and horse builder. I mean, I think that with tips I give you, if you take them on board, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna run some really, really great workshops, and you're gonna have lots of fun doing it. I mean, the more you do it, the more confident you are. I can assure you, you want to keep doing it because it's really, really good fun, and it makes your work easy, and it makes other people do your work for you. When what else can you ask for? I mean, it's just I find it great. I got my clients who are paying me doing a lot of the work that I should be doing in my workshops, which I think is really good. So I think about you running lots of workshops. Hopefully, you will address all these issues that create walls between you and your clients and your colleagues, like things like the fear of the unknown and the losing control and miscommunication and lack of trust. All these hopefully will be addressed just by spending time with them in the workshops and doing things together. Doesn't matter actually what the workshops are about, but you can get much, much more out of it if you want to. So I hope everything you learned today will help to bring down the walls that stand between you and achieving UX greatness. So thank you very much.